literally think about what you're thinking about. Are you thinking positive thoughts? Are you focused on the things you're grateful for? Or are you focused on negativity? And no matter how bad things seem, I've been there. It does get better.
Welcome to Henderson HQ. This is the podcast where you get all the stories behind the businesses that make our community tick. Don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Hey there, Henderson HQ. Thank you so much for watching the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter at hendersonhq.com. This is Scott Groves. I'm here actually with my new friend, and for those of you that aren't watching on camera, you're listening. This is Staff Sergeant Robert Quayle III, retired. He wrote a book called Bobby, There Is Always a Light at the End of the Tunnel, which at first I was like, oh, I wonder who Bobby is. And then I realized Bobby's short for Robert. So this might be a book that you gift to somebody and legitimately saves their life. I'm embarrassed to say we scheduled this podcast pretty quickly, so I haven't gotten through the book, but we're going to get the story today. And then I've got my copy here that I'm going to read. So Robert, or Bobby, however you prefer to be called.
Hello.
Tell us kind of where the military service starts. Obviously you're local here in Henderson. You reached out to me on the Facebook group. Shout out to John Novak for running the best Facebook group, Living in Henderson.
Yeah.
So if you're not a member of that group, please join there. But we connected in there, and you're like, hey, I've got a pretty interesting story. I've got a book that I think literally could save somebody's life, and I'd love to come on and talk about it. And as a veteran myself who served from 97 to 2000 before we were in the global war on terror, anything I could do to help veterans, I'm always in, because I've got a little bit of like guilt maybe about, I trained, but I was basically a professional drinker at Fort Riley, Kansas, and got out before 9/11. So anything that I could do to help the veterans and what I've seen them go through. But why don't you tell us a little bit about like where your life starts, where your military career starts, and then, how we ended up in the spot where you thought you were going to be a statistic of the 22 veterans we lose a day to suicide. So
Yes.
tell me where it starts, and
Okay.
I'll probably just let you go from there. All right.
Well, I have a very unique background. Like you, I served the first time in the 80s. I was right out of high school. I graduated high school about 2 years early. That's a story in the book too. I was in advanced classes, then we moved, and I wasn't in advanced classes, and I got bored, so they let me graduate early. And so, not knowing what I was going to do with my life, by a quirk of fate, a very serendipitous story in and of itself, I decided to go work at the county fair. And while I ended up getting a job as a carny at the county fair, and this guy showed me how to run this game. It's you had to stand a glass Coke bottle up on a piece of wood inside of a circle, and it was possible. And he taught me how to do it. He goes, the easier you make it look, the more money you're going to make, and I'll give you 25 cents for every dollar you bring in. I ended up making $1,000 that week. That was an insane amount of money for a 17-year-old in the 80s. And they wanted me to go on the road with them and so on. But what the quirk of fate was, while I was drawing people in, these two absolutely beautiful girls in Army uniform come walking up. They're like, hey, sweetie, would you like some information about the Army? I'm like, you guys are in the Army? Sign me up. They weren't in the Army. I found out later from the recruiter.
Yeah. Good move by him.
Genius. Yeah. But the next day, the recruiter was at my house, and before you know it, I was in the Army. And my first assignment was Germany. And I served over there for 4 years. I started out as a communication specialist, but then went to intelligence. The colonel, the battalion commander, had asked me if I was interested, and I ended up being in counter intel over in Germany because they liked the fact that I could speak German, and I ended up being bait for the Eastern agents. They were trying to.
So yeah, this is late 80s before the wall fell.
Yeah, the wall was still there, height of the Cold War, if you will. It was very interesting. So I got to do some real world stuff while I was there. And then I got out of the Army, and because I wanted to see what I could do in the quote unquote real world.
Right.
And I ended up getting into banking. I was a banker for 20 years. I did everything on the retail side of banking. I was a branch manager, business banking officer, loan officer, financial advisor. I did it all. And then 2008 happened. The economy crashed. I lost my job as a banker, didn't know what the heck I was going to do.
By chance, did you work at Washington Mutual like I did and it all fell apart?
No,
Oh,
no, I was working for a local bank at the
okay.
time, but regional bank. But yeah, they just called me in one day, said, "Hey, we're shutting our doors and we got to let everybody go." So that was that. And it wasn't like I was going to get another job in banking. Everybody was closing or letting people go.
Yeah.
So
I remember there was a 2-year period there. I think in 2008, I made $18,000 the whole year as a loan officer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should have gotten bankrupt, but
yeah,
yeah. So anyway, sorry, carry on.
yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. Either I take a risk and burn through all my life savings waiting for things to get better, or I do something different. And then one day I was sitting in the backyard with my dog by the fire pit drinking a beer, and like a light bulb, it came on over my head. I'm going back in the Army. And I just announced it out loud as soon as the idea hit. My wife looks at me and she's like, "Are you crazy? You're too old. You're too this, you're too that." And the more she said that, the more motivated I became. Don't tell me I can't do something, because then I'm going to do it. And so I spent 2 months. I dropped 50 pounds. I got myself back in shape. I put myself through basic training, essentially. And I got to where I could pass physical fitness tests. And I went and saw a recruiter. And the first question was, "Do you think you can pass the PT test?" I said, "I'll take it right now." And so next thing you know, I was back in the Army at Fort Sill.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was on track to go to warrant officer school. That was my plan. I wanted to get to Afghanistan as a warrant officer, for a career in intelligence. Because once I retired, I could work for any of the three-letter agencies as an intel guy, and that was a plan. But during they didn't make me go through basic training when I went back in, but they had me go to a refresher course at Fort Sill where they taught us. And they did the combat lifesavers course, weapons qualification, PT tests, all that sort of thing. Just the basics. Make sure you're ready for whatever unit you're going to. And they were teaching us combatives as well, which is Brazilian jiu-jitsu, essentially. And it's for hand-to-hand combat purposes. And they paired me up with this kid in his 20s, and he outweighed me by at least 50 pounds. And they told us ahead of time, you're not trying to hurt each other. You're not going to choke each other out. You're just trying to learn the moves. If you get black and blue, that's okay, because you're in the Army. You should be able to take a punch, right?
Right.
So anyway, they were trying to prove a point that age and size doesn't matter, which is true when you're fully trained. It didn't happen in this case. We got into it. I got him in a rear naked choke by luck, I think, more than anything. He outweighed me by at least 50 pounds, and it was all muscles. So, I mean, but I got him in a rear naked choke. And when it became obvious that he couldn't move, that I had him, all his buddies started making fun of him, calling him all the names you can imagine they were calling him. And his face changed. He got that 1,000-mile stare on his face. And I was like, whoa, it's not that serious. I let go and I tapped him, and then he turned on me. And it took 3 soldiers to get him off of me. And in the process, he had fractured my spine. But we didn't know it at the time. The medics did an x-ray and they're like, "You're fine. Take some ibuprofen, drink some water, and go back to work."
Yeah. Typical Army.
Yeah. So I ended up going through 18 months worth of training, getting ready to go to Afghanistan, where we're doing 25-mile ruck marches with 60 pounds on our back and all that.
Oh,
Everything.
worst possible thing you could do for a spinal injury.
Yeah.
Go rucking.
Yeah, it was fractured right by my heart too, at T7 and 8. So one wrong move and I could have been in a lot of trouble. But about 18 months into it, I went for a run one morning with my first sergeant and one of my soldiers. And about a mile down the road, my legs stopped working. My brain's telling my legs to move, but they're like, "No, we're going to drag today." And I can't describe it any better than that. And my soldier wanted to throw me over his shoulder and carry me back to the barracks. And something told me that was a bad idea, because, he could have fractured it even more. I said, "No, just let me hang on to you and we'll get back." And I ended up going to the hospital. They did an MRI. They found the fracture, and the doctor came into the office. He was a colonel, and he says, "Sergeant, do you know your spine is fractured?" I was like, "What?" He said, "You have a hairline fracture at T7 and 8. and we're going to have to do surgery immediately. I was like, what? He goes, I have to tell you before, while he's talking to me, they're putting, the sleep medicine in my IV and everything, knocking me out, getting me right. They were taking me right into surgery immediately. And he goes, you know, you're very lucky. You could be a quadriplegic right now or even dead. And, because I told him I didn't know when it happened. He says, you've been going through training and doing PT. I said, yes, sir. And he's like, you're a very lucky guy. And he says, I have to tell you, when you wake up, you may not be able to walk again. And, I was under the influence of drugs. So I said, F you, sir. I'm going to walk out of this hospital. And he says, I hope you do, Sergeant. And that was the last thing I remembered. And then ended up spending 75 days in the hospital, and I was going through therapy to learn how to walk again. And I did walk out.
Because your leg, like, legitimately shut down, right?
Yeah, they did.
The nerves or
I
something.
could move them a little bit, but not enough to even walk.
Ooh. What was that like, that 2 months of just like, to me, I mean, obviously some resilience in there, but that sounds like hell.
Yeah.
Having to learn how to walk again and
Torture.
yeah. I mean, that just, I like to think I'm a tough guy that can get through anything, but like that, those kind of challenges, you just never really know how you're going to respond until you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was determined. Don't tell me I can't do something. And that colonel was standing outside and he saluted me when I came out.
So I'm guessing that ends your military career?
Yeah, I was medically retired at that point. And I thought, geez, what am I going to do now?
And what year is it? 2010, 11-ish, just around there?
2013.
2013, okay.
I'd been on active duty at that point. By the time the med board actually finished, I had been in 6 years. It took forever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was medically retired, and while I was still going through the process, I talked to my wife, and we decided we were going to buy a franchise, some sort of veteran-friendly franchise. And I ended up getting one, a retail franchise. And I went through the training in California while I was stationed at Fort Bliss. I was on medical leave, essentially. Yeah, so I went and got training for this franchise. And I took over the franchise, and I ended up selling it about 2 years later, because with my spinal injury, it involved dealing with heavy packages for customers and shipping them, and standing on my feet all day, and it just didn't work well with my disability. And so I ended up selling the store.
When do things start to go sideways for you emotionally?
Well, that's when it happened. I was at the store. I had a really bad day. This particular store didn't like me hanging the flag, American flag, in the back. We had, we call them the corporate police. They would come in and make sure that the store matched the layout that they wanted. And they wanted all the stores to look the same, which makes perfect sense.
Fair, yeah.
And these people walked in. They weren't 2 steps in the store, and they pointed. I had the American flag that was given to me when I retired hanging on the back wall over my desk. And nobody ever complained about it, of course. It's the American flag, right? They said, you have to take that down. I said, excuse me? They said, you have to take that flag down. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Show me a court order that says I have to, and I'll take it down. Until then, it's staying up. I literally broke my back for that flag. So it's not coming down. And they left. They were angry. And what ended up happening, I had a business in town that was spending about $3,000 a month in my store. That paid my rent and utilities. They sent a salesman into his office, offered him the same rates that I was paying as a franchisee, effectively cutting me out of that $3,000 a month.
Over the American flag?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like a very veteran-friendly business.
Yeah, that's why I'm not saying their name.
Yeah, I understand.
But they, he called me as soon as they left his office, and he told me what they offered. He said, can you match these rates? And I said, no, that's what I pay. And he says, well, I hope you understand. I said, well, yeah, it's a business decision. I would do the same thing if I were in your shoes. So I didn't fault him for it. I faulted them. And it was a violation of our franchise agreement. But my attorney said that, he goes, listen, they have attorneys. They have very deep pockets. They'll bankrupt you before you win. You'll win, but you'll be bankrupt.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. So I was determined. I was like, okay, you took 3 grand a month out of my pocket. I'm going to make up for it. I was determined. I wanted to show them. So I ended up getting a contract with the IX Center in Cleveland. It's a big convention center. They have all kinds of different like home and garden shows, auto shows, that sort of thing. And they had a memorabilia thing, sports memorabilia auction. It's huge. There were thousands of people there. And they wanted my presence there so that they could ship these, $100,000 baseball bat, ship it home or wherever so it'd be safe so they didn't have to carry it around with them. So I made more money that week at the IX Center than I made in 6 months
Nice.
with the store. So I was like, yeah, 3,000 a month, no big deal.
Hey guys, just a quick ad from our sponsors here that make this podcast and our newsletter possible. Want to give a shout out to Ethereal Med Spa, a gym for your skin. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing anything proactive all the way up to spot removal, all the way up to beautification, right? Or vanity. Ethereal Med Spa, they got you covered. Scott Wright over at Wright Auto Body, love them. So anything from a scratch and dent to a big insurance job, all the way up to a custom rebuild of a classic car, they got you covered. And shout out to my buddy Casey Halstead, owner of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, which now has 3 locations. They just opened a new location on the west side. So they got our Henderson location, they got a mid-city location, and they've got a west side location. So anywhere in the valley where you're looking to train jiu-jitsu, check out 10th Planet Las Vegas. Now back to the show.
It was right before Christmas time. And I was excited because I wanted to give my employees their paychecks plus a big fat bonus for Christmas. And I came in, I logged into my account, the balance was 0. They took all the money out of the account. They said you had no right to those profits because we didn't authorize you to be there. And they kept the money. I even went into full-on panic mode. I go, what am I going to do? I have employees to pay. Christmas is coming. I freaked out. I told my employees I'm going to go for a walk. I went for a walk in the metro parks in Cleveland. I don't know if you've heard of them. And they also refer to it as the Emerald Necklace around northern Ohio. It's a park system that they purposely left intact since the state began. You could get lost in there. It's pretty dense forest at some points. So I went for a walk. I wanted to clear my head. I'm trying to figure out how am I going to get these guys paid. I'm thinking about, cash advances on credit cards and tapping into the equity line, all that sort of thing. And I kept walking and walking. And at one point I had remembered that I had my Glock in the trunk of my car. I had planned that day after work to go to the shooting range that's on my way home. He was a customer of mine. He kept asking me, when are you going to come in and shoot? So that day I was going to go in and shoot. I wasn't thinking about using it or anything for whatever reason. I just went and got it and stuck it in my belt and kept walking. Before I realized that 8 hours had passed. It just went by while I was walking. And if you can picture this, the sun's setting behind me and the beams of light are coming through the trees over my shoulder, over my left shoulder. I was sitting on a boulder by the river and just thinking, and getting more and more depressed as time went by. And I pulled the gun out and I put it to my head. And right then a miracle intervened. I had called it a miracle. It could have been just a coincidence or what have you. But as soon as I did that, the trees in front of me opened up and sunlight came through on I could feel heat on my face. And at that same exact moment, I heard Carrie Underwood singing Jesus Take the Wheel as if she was standing right in front of me. Now, it could have been in my head. It could have been somebody driving by in a car with it blasting on the radio or whatever. But I dropped the gun.
I do coaching for a living now. I was a loan officer for 25 years and been coaching people for 10 years. And I was hosting an event with a bunch of people that had made it through 2008. It's one of my early coaching events. And I asked how many people after 2008, after the financial crisis, probably lost everything. You probably thought you were on track with rental properties and whatnot to have a beautiful retirement. It's all gone, and then you're another couple years of not making money. I'm like, how many of you guys had some really, really dark thoughts? And four of the 7 people in the room admitted that at one point they had a gun to their head.
Yeah.
And you went through that. and then you recover, get into the Army, and then you break your back and almost become a quadriplegic.
Yeah.
And then you get through that, and then you find a franchise that you think is going to be your lifeblood for the rest of your career, and then they kind of stab you in the back. Like, this is just like over the course of, I don't know, 8 or 9 years,
Yeah.
you're just getting punched in the gut over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, the part I didn't mention is my dog and my father died too during that process.
You're like a bad country music song, man. Your life story is like, I could put this through ChatGPT and just create a country music, like probably a whole album.
Oh, I got another story related to that too. No, it's when I was writing the book, I was going through this part. That's the most difficult part. And it's really only one chapter in the book. I thought, let me retrace my steps to make sure my memory isn't playing tricks on me. Because if you remember, I said I was sitting on a boulder and the sun was setting behind me over my left shoulder. If that's true, how did sunlight come through the trees in front of me?
Mhm.
So I was like, let me go check this out. So I didn't go through the whole 8 hours, but I went to that spot and I sat on the boulder and I pulled out my phone, and there's a compass on your phone. And I said, let me check this. And I was facing exactly east. So if I was facing exactly east, it was setting behind me to the west. So what that light was that came through the trees, I don't know. So um, it confirmed for me that actually happened. So
So after this moment, where thankfully you decide not to take your own life, is there continued depression, or did hitting that Rubicon kind of, I hate to use the term, snap you out of it, because the psyche is hard to describe, but
yeah,
what happens walking back to the car and post that?
yeah, walking back to the car, my thoughts were, I'm so glad I didn't do it. I still carry that gun to this day, by the way, because it's not the gun,
Right.
it's you. So, and I thought, I'm going to have to face the music for I literally pulled the battery out of my phone at that time, and so it was powered off, and nobody could see where I was at or anything. So I put the phone back together, and of course, it was going crazy with voicemails and texts, and I got back. I drove home, and I parked in the garage, and I went in, and the house was eerily quiet. It turns out that my employees called my wife. They were worried about me. We don't know where he's at. He's not responding. She came home. She saw the gun was missing, and she panicked. She had no reason to believe I would use it on her, but the fact that it was gone scared her, and I don't blame her. So she called the police, and I didn't know that. And I got in the house. The dogs weren't there. She wasn't there. And I texted her. I said, I'm home. I figured she went to her friends or something. And within like 30 seconds, there was a knock on the front door. It's the police. I let them in, and I told them what happened, and they were very kind. They got me the help I needed. And it was a long recovery. This is over 10 years ago when this happened. And, if you compare my life today to what it was then, been completely upgraded every way you can possibly imagine. And then some. Financially, spiritually, everything upgraded completely. That's why I wrote the book. At one point, several years ago, I decided I needed a new Cadillac. So the only way to do that is to earn more money. So, and being retired, what am I going to do? So I started driving for Uber Black in Cleveland. And I made great money and paid the car off in 2 years. And I had over 5,000 trips under my belt. And the most common comment that I got from passengers was some form of, dude, you should write a book. And I kept going, what? About what? I would tell them stories while we're driving, about Army and my Army life or whatever. And I kept thinking, I'm nobody, I'm just a veteran, had a rough time, went through some challenges, that's, so what? And then I remembered what happened 10 years ago. And I was like, well, that's worth writing about, because I'm so happy I didn't. And I'm living proof that there is, in fact, light at the end of the tunnel.
When does this become top of mind to you, or maybe you knew it the whole time, of like what you experienced, 22 vets a day, experience, they're taking their own life. And there's a myriad of reasons they do that, right? Whether it's financial problems or their wife left them when they were in the military, or they were at the tip of the spear, like some of my friends that are in special forces, and they've just seen and done some horrific stuff that they have a hard time figuring out in their mind.
Yeah.
Like where the connection? Like was this a thought when you were going through recovery and getting your head right, or was it, I experienced this, I happen to be a veteran, I know a lot of other people experience this? When did this start to become more of a mission for you?
Not until about 10 years after that happened.
Okay.
I went through, I spent 3 days at the VA. They told me from the moment I walked in, they said, "You don't need to be here," just based on the way I was acting and talking to them. They said, "But by law, we have to keep you here, so please bear with us." It was kind of interesting watching some seriously mentally ill people deal with whatever their demons they had to deal with. So, but after that, we ended up getting divorced because of everything that happened, which is understandable. But then I met another uh, woman who I ended up marrying, and things went very well. I stayed retired. I did side gigs here and there with Uber and whatnot, and just one day it hit me. I need to write a book. It just came to me like an idea, and I thought, writing about that, what happened 10 years ago, if I can stop one person from taking their own life, it'll be worth it. But I had no idea. This is only 2 years ago. At the time, I was live streaming poker for the World Poker Tour.
Okay.
I love to play poker, and I'm a member of Club WPT, their site. It was the only legal online site in Ohio. I ended up winning a $10,000 buy-in on a cruise in the Caribbean. They took over an entire cruise ship in the Caribbean for poker. It was all poker. It was televised. They had TV crews and the whole 9 yards, and media was there. And I won this $10,000 seat, and I became part of their stream team. And I was talking about writing the book while I was streaming, to my poker buddies, as they call them, all my followers. They encouraged me to write the book. They said, "You need to write that book, and you need to keep playing poker," because I was talking about quitting poker at the time. I was frustrated. I was having some bad runs, and they said, "No, you need to keep playing poker, and you need to write that book." So I listened to them. And one day I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to try. I don't know what I'm doing, but I opened up a Word document and I started typing. And
Were you a writer? Did you go to
no,
school for writing?
no.
Just never a passion project of yours? You just decided you were going to write a book?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just started typing. It evolved. It took me about a month and a half, 2 months to get through it, actually. It's got,
300 pages is not
yeah.
easy to write. Speaking from experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get a writing coach, or did you have a editor or publisher or anything? Or
When I got done with it, I started going back through it to edit it and reword some stuff and change things around and whatnot. And I ended up using a software program designed for authors to help you edit, that sort of thing. So uh, when I thought it was ready, I decided that I would, I was thinking I'll probably have to send it to like 1,000 publishers before it gets published by anybody. And I ended up, it was the first publisher called Covenant Publishing.
yeah.
Then I sent it to, they called me the next day. They said, "We want to do this book."
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And now
Because I know a lot of those people, by the way, that are on their, 100th publisher they're submitting their book to, and they're trying really hard, and they don't want to go the self-publishing route or whatever. So,
there's a lot of serendipitous stuff that's happened throughout my life. What I didn't get into yet is all the crazy luck I've had all my life. I've gone through some tough things, obviously, but I've always had a crazy amount of luck. A lot of serendipitous things happen to me that can't be explained. While I was writing the book, I have pop-ups blocked on my computer. Well, this pop-up kept popping up for Covenant Books, the publisher, while I was writing the book. And I was like, where is this coming from? I just kept closing it. And I was like, I checked, I had pop-ups were blocked. How is this getting through? I thought it was a virus or something. And then, I was on my phone looking at Facebook, and then I started getting ads on Facebook for Covenant Publisher. I was like, what is going on here? And finally, I checked them out, and they were accepting manuscripts. So I sent them one. It was the first place I sent it to, and they called me the next day. So, and here we are. I mean, I have an audiobook, it's in paperback and hardbook, and it's unbelievable. Getting back to that cruise that I won the trip on, here's another, and this is how I wound up moving here to Vegas. I took 2 steps onto the ship, and my phone goes off with an invitation to a private party on the 16th deck. I was like, wow, this thing has 16 decks. And then my next thought was, wait a minute, private party, they must have invited the wrong guy. I'm nobody in the poker world, at least not yet anyway, right? And so I thought, well, I'll throw my stuff in the cabin, and then I'll go up and let them know they invited the wrong guy. And I don't know if you're familiar with the cast of the TV show for the World Poker Tour when they're on Valley Sports or ESPN, but their host is Lynn Gilmartin. She's this beautiful redheaded Australian woman. She's been their host for 20 some odd years now, and she's very nice. And I've been watching her on TV for like 20 years, her and Tony Dunst and the rest of the crew. And I take the elevator up, and the elevator doors open, and guess who's standing there? Lynn Gilmartin. She turns around, she goes, "Are you Bob?" And I about passed out. I was like, what? How the heck does she? I said, yeah. She goes, hold on a second. She waves this guy over named Mike. He was kind of running everything with the World Poker Tour. He goes, "You're Bob Quayle." I said, "Man, I didn't do it. I swear to God, I don't know what happened." He goes, "Yes, you are." I said, "Yeah, I'm Bob Quayle." He goes, "And you wrote a book." And I said, "How did you know about that?" He goes, "Well, when you were talking about it in the stream back in February, I was listening in. I didn't know he was listening." He goes, "I assume you wrote it." I said, "Yes, I did." He goes, "Great, because the producer of the show wants to hear about your book." And I'm like, "What?" So I'm starting to think I'm supposed to be on this cruise. And so I told the producer about the book. She says, "Oh my God, we're gonna put you on camera. We're gonna interview you about your book, and we're gonna help promote your book for you. And my people contact your people, blah blah blah." And I said, "Well, I don't have any people." She says, "Well, my people will get a hold of you." And they did. They followed me around. Oh, that's hold on, one more thing. They interviewed me first. They had a studio set up on the ship, and by the end of the interview, the producer and the sound guy were in tears, happy tears, because I have such a happy ending. The producer says, "How would you feel about being in some TV commercials?" I said, "What?" She goes, "We'll have a camera crew follow you around on the cruise for like the next 3 or 4 days. Are you okay with that?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" She goes, "No, we're not kidding." I said, "Sure, why not?" So I did. I felt like a movie star. I had the camera crew follow me around all over the cruise. They filmed me on Bimini Beach walking and with the waves in the background, and they had me walk out. They scripted it. They had me walk up to the camera and go, "So I won my way into paradise, and so can you." And that was the end of the commercial. And I'll never forget that. And then the sound guy says, "Listen, you have to meet my wife. She's an author too. She likes to meet other authors." So I said, "All right, great." And he introduced us, and I talked to her, and she says, "You have to meet my son. He's directly involved with preventing suicides in the military." Now I know I'm supposed to be on this cruise.
Right.
I was like, "You're kidding me." And she says, "No." She says, "Here's his name." She told me his name, and she said she wouldn't tell me anything else about him. She said, "Get a hold of him. You'll find him on LinkedIn, and when you message him on LinkedIn, after you get home, tell him Mom says hi from the cruise in the Caribbean. Then he'll know who you are, because I'm going to tell him about you." I was like, "Wow, who is this guy?" And I get home, I bring up LinkedIn, and I look up this guy. He's Major General Edward Vaughan of the United States Air Force. He's currently working in the Pentagon. And I about fell out of my seat. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to message this guy. The feds will be at my front door." But I did. I messaged him. I said, "Mom says hi from the cruise in the Caribbean," just like she told me to, and he responded immediately. And he's been helping me ever since. He didn't help me write it, but he helped me. He advised me as a military member, as a friend. He gave me 2 endorsements. The way that happened was he messaged me on LinkedIn one day. He said, "Bob, check your Amazon reviews." I said, "Oh man, did I get the 1 star there, everybody?" He said, "No, just check." And then he said, "Call me when you're done." He left me a review a mile long, and it made me cry. It blew my mind. And so I called him. I was like, "Geez, sir, I didn't ask for that." He goes, "Yeah, but you deserve it." He said, "Listen, I wanted you to call me because I wanted to tell you that I wrote a small endorsement that you can put on the back cover. And you can also, I went to the Department of Defense. I got permission. You can use my Amazon review and the quote I'm going to text you in any way you see fit to promote your book." Wow. And all because I play poker. I was on active duty a total of about 15 years. I saw a general once at a distance,
Right.
change of command ceremony or something like that. And now I'm friends with 4 of them because he introduced me to Brigadier General Tykert. These are all Air Force guys. I was in the Army, but my father was in the Air Force and he's deceased. So I'm wondering if maybe he might have something to do.
So all that he's looking out for you.
But now the crazy part of this, one of the crazy parts of the story is, because of all the success I had with the World Poker Tour, I ended up doing pretty good. And I ended up winning 5 seats in the Prime Championship here in Vegas the following December after that cruise. I was the only guy in the whole world that won 5 seats, which essentially meant I could get knocked out 4 times and still be playing in the tournament. Because of all that, because of the success, and when they were filming the commercials, when it hit me, I'm moving to Vegas. And that's why I moved here. And when I was following the real estate agent around, Henderson, I almost got into an accident because I looked over at the mountain at one point, and carved into the side of the mountain are my 2 initials, BQ. Huge. Obviously, they weren't put there for me, but I saw that. I almost got in an accident. Like, this is hell. I was like, what? Obviously, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I took that as a sign. And I'm also we're right next to Nellis Air Force Base, which is home of the fighter pilot. Both of the generals that have endorsed my book were fighter pilots and went through training at one point at that base.
When you originally wrote the book, you're getting your story out there, and then this whole thing is morphed into your story as a veteran, hopefully helping other veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit of that? Because I know that there's an email in the book. Yeah, just tell us about that.
And that's getting back to why I wrote the book in the first place, is because my hope is that at least one person out there, I told my wife, who's now an ex, by the way, I told her at the time, I says, if it stops one person from taking their own life, it'll be worth it to me. I don't care if I make any money off of it or not, as long as it saves at least one life. And I put an email in the book twice, and I basically said, if you're reading this and you decide, hey, if this guy can get through all this stuff, so can I, then I want to know. And I've received 2 emails so far.
I don't want to sound trite, but it's like doing the Lord's work is the only thing that keeps coming into my mind.
Yeah.
Because, you're retired, you have other passions. You've lived a lot of different lives, for what we've covered. But do you feel like this is, for lack of a better term, your calling now? Like, are you planning to speak more to veterans?
Absolutely. It's my mission. I would like nothing more than to, maybe be a motivational speaker or something along those lines. And the book, it's helped a lot of people that I didn't think I could write, but I guess I can. General Tykert, he gave me an endorsement too. He says, I wrote a very powerful book. And I was like, wow, really? That's my mission in life now. And what I do for fun is I play poker.
Okay.
And I used the GI Bill, and I went to poker dealer school.
Okay.
So I'm going to be a poker dealer. I have a job with one of the top 3 casinos in Vegas as a dealer. I start on May 4th. And I'll also be dealing in the World Series of Poker.
You're like the Dos Equis guy, right? You love the most interesting man in the world. This is
Thanks.
This is awesome. So what's next for you in the book, right? Because obviously when a publisher picks up the book, they have an expectation of how much, how many they want to sell and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But where do you see, Bobby, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Where do you see this going as far as like expanding your impact to help more veterans or just anybody that's thinking about making the ultimate bad decision?
Well, that's the thing. It's not going to help anybody if nobody reads it. So that's my main purpose is trying to get the word out there so more people will have access to it. I even approached it's called AFES,
Yeah.
the stores on bases.
Yes.
I thought, if any store in the world should have books written by veterans, it should be AFES.
Right.
And the response I got from them was, "We don't offer your kind of book." It's like, what are you talking about? But that was the response. So, but I won't give up on that. In these generals that I've met, I know four of them now. Three of them are authors. And the one that's on active duty currently told me that I inspired him to write his own book.
It's awesome.
So he's going to write a book. And the one thing I found after writing this book is that just about everybody has experienced suicide in some way or another. They know somebody, they thought about it themselves, they're related to somebody. It's affected most people, unfortunately.
Yeah. And, I kind of know what it is, but I don't know what it is, specifically about military veterans that think this is the out. And, this is going to sound very strange, but it's like, I understand suicide. I'm endorsing it. This is not a cry for help. I don't need to check air on the, I don't even, but I understand and getting to a place in your life, whether it's financially or emotionally or health wise, where it's just like you feel like I can understand where that's the only option. So, having been there and now having talked to a lot of people that have almost been there, what would you tell somebody that's going down that path emotionally where they think that's the solution?
I would tell them, don't do it. The phrase that I tell myself all the time that helped me the most is think about what you think about. That makes you literally think about what you're thinking about. Are you thinking positive thoughts? Are you focused on the things you're grateful for? Or are you focused on negativity? And, no matter how bad things seem, I've been there. It does get better.
Yeah, I've read some stats or some testimonials of people that have jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge or
Mhm.
people that have attempted suicide and failed, thankfully.
Yeah.
And to a T, every single one of them says the moment I pulled the trigger and luckily it misfired, or I jumped and I was fall, or whatever the tragedy is, they immediately realized it was a mistake. And so, not that people can hear this when they're in an emotional state of mind, but I wish they could,
Yeah.
because I presume everybody who's done it realizes at that moment of impact, whether they live or die, that it was a mistake, that
Yeah.
everybody has something worth living for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even if you don't have any family or anything, you can still have a dramatic impact on others in a positive way.
Yeah.
And that can make your life positive. It's karma. You
Yeah.
do good things happen. So
How have you found people can introduce the book to maybe somebody that they're scared of, right? This isn't a perfect correlation, but I think of coaching, which I do, tends to attract a lot of people that are sober. So probably about 10% of my coaching clients are on some path of sobriety recently or for 28 years or whatnot. And, all of them say effectively the same thing, is like, you can't help somebody until they want to get helped.
Right.
They're trying to get sober. But sadly, if we play this out to the end of suicide, you're too late to help them, right?
Yeah.
And so, how have you seen either people introduce your book or try to get people help that they know that they're struggling? Like, how can people intervene? I guess is what I'm coming.
Yeah. That's a very difficult thing. But the way that some of my friends have done it is they say, "Man, you got to read this book. This guy's had a crazy life. You just got to read it." Because a lot of the funny things or serendipitous things I haven't even gotten into, like throughout my childhood. I had scarlet fever when I was 9 years old, and I died on my living room couch for a few minutes. And I had a whole experience behind that, and the doctor was there, and yeah. Well, after that, I lost all fear. I have no natural fears or phobias of anything, which is both a blessing and a curse. But, I'm not afraid of anything. I haven't been since that day. But I would ride my bike off the roof of my house on a dare and not get hurt, and one day when I was 12, we found this huge oak tree at the top of a ravine, with a swing on it, a rope and a piece of wood. And you could tell by looking at it, it had been there for probably decades. And we're like, wow, check this thing out, and we're tugging on the rope, making sure it's still strong. And we figured it was still good. And we start swinging out over the ravine. And when you reach the apex, at that point, if you look down, you're about 100 feet off the bottom of the ravine. And there's a stream down there and logs and rocks everywhere. And it was kind of scary, but exhilarating at the same time. And we were 12 years old,
Yeah, of course. That's when you do stupid stuff.
yeah, you're invincible at 12, or so you think. I was the biggest kid, and we started, you know, competing. Let's see who can swing out the furthest, right? And I took a running jump, and I swung out, and I went further than anybody had at that point. But as soon as at that moment when you pause before you go back, the rope snapped. You hear this, "Phew," and I went straight down to the bottom. And you know what? I didn't even get a bruise.
How many times has God said,
I didn't even get a bruise. Yeah, it's a few times. It's throughout the book. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff. I as a daredevil as a kid, we had this tower in the backyard. Those giant electrical towers. They're like 150 feet tall. Like A-frame kind of with the giant cables on them with power. I used to climb up that tower all the way to where I was so close I could reach out and grab one of those cables and carve my initials BQ in that tower behind my house. And, the neighbor kids used to come over and yell at me to come, "My mom said you need to come down, get down from there." And of course, I'd give them the one finger salute and, the kids. Right. And there was a freight train down the street that went by the neighborhood down the street. And I used to hop the freight train and ride it to my girlfriend's house. And one day I was like 15 at the time. I hop on the train, and normally it was going really slow because it was going by a residential area. So I could ride it and just jump off at my girlfriend's house, and she thought I was cool. And, kids being kids. And one day the train just started speeding up all of a sudden. I was like, oh no, I got to get off this thing. But at that same moment, it was going over a bridge, over a river, and I couldn't jump. I had to wait until it crossed the bridge. And by the time it crossed the bridge, it was going even faster. And I'm starting to think I'm going to end up in California or something. I was in Ohio at the time. And I'm panicking, and then I see what looked like a pond coming up on my side of the train. And I thought, well, this is my chance. I'm going to jump into the pond. And I did. And it wasn't water. It was this black, slimy muck. It smells like rotten eggs. Yeah. I was okay, but I was covered in this stuff from head to toe, and I was getting sick from the smell, and I had to walk, like over a mile back home, and who knows what would have happened to me if I hadn't jumped at that in that.
well, you ended up in California,
Probably, or
join the fair with Carney.
yeah, right. So yeah, there's all kinds of stories throughout the book, and that's what some of my friends have done to get other people to read it. You wouldn't believe all the stuff this guy's been through. The difficulties started too with early childhood. I was abused as a child, and I don't go into any great detail in the book, but that's how chapter 1 starts out, on a tough note. But I survived all that. What I found is with most people, there's at least one story in my book that they can that resonates with them, that they've been through or have experienced themselves, So that's why I wrote it. It's an interesting story. I've heard, but the main purpose is to let people know they need to keep trying.
And last question, then I'll let you get out of here. But do any of those negative thoughts ever creep back into your head, or have you got past that?
Sometimes, but that's when I say to myself, think about what you think about. And it makes me change. It's like a trigger for me.
And like tactically, how do you do that? Do you have a gratitude journal, or do you go into meditation or prayer? Or like,
oh yeah, I pray every night, and I talk about what I'm grateful for. Stay focused on the good things and what you want from life, not what you don't want. because whatever you focus on is what you get.
That's the line to end a podcast. I do want to ask, where can people find you? Give them the title of the book one more time.
Yeah.
And
It's Bobby, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. It's like somebody's telling me that.
right.
And it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's an audiobook format, paperback and hardcover. And they're even talking about making a movie out of it. I'll believe that when it happens. But yeah, the publisher's actually considering a movie. So we'll see what happens with that. And you'll never guess who's interested in possibly doing it.
No.
Angel Studios.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here, even though this is the first time we've met each other in this interview, but I think I just made a new friend. I hope people pick up the book, especially if they know somebody who's really struggling. And do you want to give out any information on how people can get in touch with you? You got a website or social media or anything?
Yeah, there's a TikTok account. It's under Bobby's Light Foundation.
I laugh every time I meet somebody with gray hair who's like, yeah, just find me on TikTok.
Yeah.
In my mind, TikTok is still Musical.ly, which is for like 12-year-old kids, but
Yeah.
I know this is the new way we communicate.
Well, I had no social media other than Facebook prior to the book, but the publisher insisted that I get on YouTube, and I haven't been using YouTube though. TikTok, I made a bunch of videos that are on TikTok. I got like 20,000 likes. Yeah, it's crazy, but TikTok said that 3,000 people clicked the buy now button, but I didn't sell that many books. So I don't know what's going on with that, but there's a Facebook page too for the book.
Okay.
As well. I have the general's endorsements on there and some videos, the one video that gets the biggest response is I was recorded when I opened the box that the publisher shipped to me with my author's copies of the book. It was actually real. And I was very emotional, obviously. So I couldn't believe it was real.
Yeah. Hopefully you got another book and you got another story, or you can just keep helping people with this one. But Bobby, thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's Scott Groves with the Henderson HQ podcast. I hope you got something out of that episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps the show grow. And by the way, if you are a business owner or you know a business owner who has an interesting product, service, or just an interesting backstory, please get in touch with us. Email us at thehendersonhq@gmail.com. We would love to interview you, because that's what this show is all about. It's about building community, supporting local, individually owned businesses, and just making Henderson a great place to live. And don't forget, go to hendersonhq.com and make sure you sign up for our newsletter. We send out a once-a-week newsletter, no spam, about the most interesting local businesses, hotspots, restaurants, community events. Thanks for watching the show. Really appreciate you.